Imagine being 3 times richer than Jeff Bezos, or having so much power that the US government needs to create unique laws just to control your company. During the height of his career, John D. Rockefeller's wealth amounted to 1.5% of the United States' total economic output. That's about $280 billion today. The secret to his vast wealth was his company, Standard Oil. At its height, Standard Oil controlled 90% of the US refineries and pipelines, and this was during a time when the demand for oil was soaring. Typically, for these kinds of wealthy families, on average around 10% of the family's wealth survives till the 3rd generation. However, the Rockefeller family still remains one of the richest and most powerful in the world, and for the most part, their wealth was made legally. But legal doesn't always mean ethical. This is the story of John Rockefeller. A century before tech and financial giants ruled the world, there was one name that everyone associated with wealth and power, and that was John D. Rockefeller. John was born in 1839 in Richford, New York, and he was just an ordinary boy. The fact that he would become one of America's most influential people was unpredictable because his father, William Avery Rockefeller, was not a great influence. You see, William was a con artist, and later he became a quack doctor, which meant that he sold homemade medicine that he concocted himself, but his real life was shrouded in mystery. He wanted to be successful, or at least give the appearance of success. You see, William paid great attention to his appearance, often dressing well to maintain an air of prosperity. And there were even rumors circulating that he was involved in a horse-stealing ring. So yeah, a pretty dubious character. So anyway, he moved his family frequently until 1857, when he settled in Cleveland, Ohio. John's father had bought them a comfortable house to live in. The city would become their permanent home and offer young John opportunities that he could never have found in the more established markets in the US East Coast. During his childhood, John D. Rockefeller grew up like any other country boy, living a simple life. He would attend a district school for a few months each year, and the rest of the time he would spend working and playing in a country setting. He was bright but unassuming. He would steadily do whatever tasks were set before him. He would chop wood, cared for horses, tended the farm, raising chickens and turkey. All in all, people never gave him a second thought. He was just ordinary. The only trait that he had that people noticed was that he was rather silent and reserved for a boy his age. Anyway, his first job was quite underwhelming. He dropped out of high school to take a minimum wage job as an assistant bookkeeper that earned him only 50 cents a day. But he had a plan. There was a vision to take him out of a life of modest income. You see, he saved all his money he earned from his job, and then he decided to ask his father for a loan. Now, we already talked about what a dubious character his father was, so I'm sure he had some money tucked away. But the important thing is, with his savings and this loan from his father, John Rockefeller took his first step into the business world in 1859. He started a commodities brokerage firm called Rockefeller and Clark that he launched with his partner. Their firm traded produce and petroleum products. Now, this was a very smart move. You see, America's oil industry was just beginning to boom. Furthermore, Cleveland's proximity to the Pennsylvania oil fields meant that it had excellent transportation network and quickly made it a hub for petroleum refining. In 1863, Rockefeller and his partners had earned enough capital to open their own refinery. Now, at this stage, you might be thinking that Rockefeller and his partners would go on to achieve great success together, making their mark on the world. A real-life American feel-good success stories of two country boys rising from humble beginnings. But that's not how our story goes. Even at an early age, John Rockefeller was cutthroat. A mere 2 years after their business started, Rockefeller kicked out his partner, bought them out, and then he went on to establish a new firm with the chemist called Samuel Andrews. At this stage, he needed even more capital. So he approached the millionaire Stephen Harkness. You see, Harkness invested $100,000 to become a silent partner, but on one condition. And that was that John would have to take Harkness's relative by the name of Henry Flagler as his partner as well. But this turned out to be a pretty good move. Flagler's organizational abilities and his creative business skills perfectly complemented Rockefeller's careful money management and strategic vision. Finally, a true partnership was built that would pave the way for Rockefeller's vast industrial empire. Now it's 1870. In just a few short years, Rockefeller had become a powerful young man sitting amongst Ohio's elites. But this was not enough for him. He wanted more. At only 31 years of age, Rockefeller incorporated the company that would make him the most inconceivably rich person and in many ways usher in the modern age of oil. You see, the company was called Standard Oil, and its tactics were brutal, and John ran the company ruthlessly. He had a strategy that would set him apart. You see, unlike his peers, Rockefeller's new company focused on oil refining. He chose this because this part of the industry boasted more stable costs than exploration and drilling. Rockefeller's obsession with cost saving and waste reduction was well known amongst his contemporaries. However, his ambition extended beyond just being efficient. He wanted to dominate. To achieve this, he invested heavily in research and development. He aggressively brought in the brightest minds and put them to work in what felt like iron-fisted engine rooms of his profit machine. Beyond R&D, Standard Oil consolidated labor in-house and expanded aggressively into markets looking for refinery byproducts. He even took on oil sites that others thought were worthless. For example, Rockefeller acquired fields in Ohio known to contain sour oil. Now, this oil was considered unusable due to its impurities, but Rockefeller knew that enough money put in the right place can solve any problem. This is where he turned to his well-established research team. They devised a method to remove the impurities, turning what was once waste into massive profit. So this approach, finding value where others saw none, became a hallmark of Rockefeller's rise to the pinnacle of the American industry. Now, this wasn't the whole story behind the Rockefeller success, because beyond shrewd tactics, he sought to dominate the market in almost the literal sense. He perfected the monopoly. He rapidly acquired smaller companies to expand his own empire, a strategy that forever shaped the future of American capitalism. In just the first 3 months of 1872, Rockefeller either bought out, shut down, or bankrupted 22 of his 26 Cleveland rivals. He was merciless in his approach. He offered what he claimed were fair market prices to struggling refineries. But in truth, the fact was that Standard Oil's underhanded tactics was driving them to bankruptcy. Standard Oil's sheer scale gave Rockefeller an unprecedented advantage. He negotiated exclusive railroad discounts by guaranteeing a massive shipment of 60 carloads of oil daily. These deals drastically cut his transportation costs. His rivals simply could not compete with him on such favorable terms. And things would have gotten even worse. Rockefeller's influence stretched even further when he backed the Southern Improvement Company. It was an open plan to fix transportation costs, yet the public was not in his favor. Public outrage quickly shut down the proposal. Despite his ability to sway politicians, Rockefeller learned that even the mightiest tycoon couldn't overpower the strength of a united public, and the public did not like him at all. His oil empire was infamous. He was often likened to an octopus with tentacles gripping not just the oil industry, but also steel, copper, shipping, state houses, and even reaching the highest offices of the US government. But even though he didn't have the public's favor, he was still dominating. By the late 1880s, Standard Oil's dominance was virtually complete. Standard Oil dominated 90% of American refineries. However, what John didn't recognize at the time was that his time in the sun was limited. This overwhelming monopoly, coupled with the scandal involving the Southern Improvement Company, put intense pressure on politicians. Facing re-election threats, they began finally passing antitrust laws and outlawing railroad rebates. It also didn't help that Rockefeller had a strict policy of avoiding the press, something that encouraged journalists to investigate Standard Oil even more deeply and exposing its underhanded tactics to the larger public. The public scrutiny and legal challenges continued to intensify. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil had violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. It led to the breakup of the company into 34 independent entities. Eventually, Rockefeller had to retire from daily operations at the age of 56, although he remained the figurehead as the president of the company. Now, ironically, this breakup was a blessing in disguise for Rockefeller. The intense pressure of running such a vast empire had taken a toll on his health. I mean, just picture a normal person in their mid-50s, and then compare it to how people described Rockefeller at that time. In her expose, journalist Ida Tarbell described Rockefeller as one of the saddest objects in the world. She noted how his alopecia had left him entirely hairless and pale. She could not help but remark that his physical change seemed to symbolize minimize his perceived wrongdoings. Now, this is where I need to do some speculations. His ruthless way of managing his businesses, the way he put many people out of jobs, the way he brutally destroyed anything in his path to build his business, all of that played a role in his diminishing health. But I think this is also a turning point because at this juncture, we notice a change in his mindset as well. You see, now he started to focus on something profoundly different, and that was charity. This shift marked the beginning of the Rockefeller Foundation, which would become the cornerstone of John D. Rockefeller's legacy. Established in 1913 by John D. Rockefeller and his family, this marked a transformative shift in his business empire to philanthropy. The foundation was built on a substantial endowment and focused on three main areas: public health, education, and scientific research. Rockefeller's commitment to public health was especially profound. His financial support helped establish the University of Chicago and the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research. Both of these would go on to become a pioneer in biomedical research. This funding also played a crucial part in developing vaccines for diseases such as meningitis and yellow fever. Additionally, he revolutionized medical training in the United States and founded China's first modern medical school. Now, growing up in the country's poorer parts, Rockefeller strongly championed for better public sanitation and health education. He established public health schools at Johns Hopkins University in 1918 and Harvard University in 1921. He also helped to launch nationwide campaigns and global health campaigns as well. These campaigns targeted diseases such as hookworm, malaria, yellow fever, and typhus. This commitment to solving widespread health issues set the stage for a more strategic approach for the Rockefeller Foundation. Instead of making numerous small donations, Rockefeller preferred to make substantial contributions to institutions with significant potential. He believed in addressing root causes and seeking lasting solutions. Soon enough, the potential on impactful and sustainable solutions extended well beyond immediate health needs. The Rockefeller Foundation was a key funder of the Green Revolution. It drastically increased agricultural productivity in the developing world and is credited to saving up to 1 billion lives. For many years, the foundation continued to distribute more foreign aid than the entire US government. In fact, so much of his wealth was given away that he could only pass a fraction of it to his descendants. In 1912, Rockefeller's fortune was nearly $900 million in that year's dollar value. But upon his death, the estate amounted to only $26 million. This shows his dedication to philanthropy. Now, having said all of this, all the contributions and benefits to society, were they really done out of goodwill and a good heart? I think there's probably a bit more of a complex answer to that. There are several reasons one could do this: tax write-offs, polishing a dark part of history, building a legacy that's beyond monetary value, and so on. One can never really examine the minds of these historical figures. All we can do is speculate based on the evidence. But at the end of the day, one cannot deny the benefits that came from the Rockefeller Foundation. Even more than a century later, the Rockefeller family still remains a powerful presence. According to Forbes, they hold a combined net worth of $10.3 billion. Although some speculate that their wealth could be even higher, we'll just deal with the information that's currently publicly available. Not only this, the family continued to produce several millionaires and even billionaires. Amongst the most prominent of the Rockefeller descendants in the 21st century was David Rockefeller, at 101 years old. This was the world's oldest billionaire. When he passed away in 2017, his net worth was about $3.3 billion. And in the oil industry, their influence also remains noticeable. Yeah, Standard Oil did break up into multiple companies due to antitrust rulings. However, many of today's major oil corporations, including BP, Exxon, ConocoPhillips, and Chevron, all trace their roots back to Standard Oil. It was only in 2016 that the family fully divested itself from the oil markets, selling all its investments in fossil fuel companies. They claim that it was because of ethical reasons. Now, the most important question is, what's the secret to their lasting wealth? The answer lies in their strategic approach to wealth preservation. You see, the secret to their lasting wealth had to do with the Rockefellers exploiting legal loopholes. To ensure their vast fortune endures through generations, the Rockefellers pioneered a concept of the family office. This is a full-service entity managing all aspects of the family's wealth, investments, and business dealings. And central to their wealth management strategy are irrevocable trusts. These trusts cannot be easily altered by their heirs. They serve to protect assets from taxes, lawsuits, and creditors. Additionally, the Rockefellers employ what is called a waterfall concept. It is a wealth transfer strategy utilizing permanent, tax-exempt, cash value life insurance policies. It's a mouthful, but to put it simply, It indefinitely postpones taxes on the transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. Let's take an example. Let's say that your grandparents take out a life insurance policy on each of their grandchildren. Now, as long as the grandparents own these policies, they can use these funds as they wish. Upon their death, the ownership of these policies is transferred to the grandchildren, who can benefit from the income and designate beneficiaries for future transfers. And again, what has been described is information publicly available. There could be various other measures not known to ordinary people that the rich use to reduce their tax liability or even part of their wealth. But it isn't just their wealth that has been long-lasting. Their influence into the realm of US politics is mind-boggling. In fact, in 2014, it marked the first time since 1950 that Rockefeller was not occupying a high political office. Multiple members of the family had served in prominent political roles, including senators and governors over the decades. What is more, several high-profile politicians themselves have married into the family. Also, it's no surprise that the Rockefeller Foundation has been used as a political tool. Initially aimed at supporting global health and educational reforms, the foundation's work has sometimes shifted towards America's foreign policy. For instance, in post-war France, the Rockefeller Foundation's involvement helped counteract communism. It played a role in influencing French economic and educational policies. This ensured France remained firmly in the sphere of America's influence. Now today, global policies continue to be shaped by the Rockefeller Foundation, alongside other major philanthropic organizations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Their initiatives range from health and agriculture to international partnerships. However, this often aligns with market-based interests. You see, through strategic positioning and substantial investments in global health and economic policies, the Rockefeller family maintains its formidable presence, shaping both domestic and international policies and platforms. It's no surprise that critics argue that these kinds of efforts often undermine international organizations such as the UN. They cited that these foundations shift the focus towards profit-centered solutions, corrupting global development strategies, and some might even say that their approach is borderline predatory. They've been accused of placing their employees in international organizations, and this is so that they can gain privileged access to scientific, business, and political elites. This strategy has led to a proliferation of global partnerships, particularly in the health sector. Critics say that these initiatives may sabotage public health development efforts for the sake of increasing their own influence in the process. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, philanthropy and seemingly generous acts can often come from a place of self-preservation and politics. Having said that, it cannot be denied that no matter what their motivations were, there were a lot of beneficiaries from these philanthropic acts. John D. Rockefeller was a master at navigating the system, ruthlessly capitalizing on every opportunity within the rules. And when those rules no longer suited his ambitions, he wasn't afraid to influence their change. His philanthropy reshaped education, science, and public health, leaving a lasting positive impact. However, we must take his legacy with a grain of salt, recognizing that there were moral compromises behind his wealth. While John Rockefeller's contributions undeniably improved many lives, they were often built on the back of a system that he manipulated to his own advantage, a complex figure who defined both the darker and the brighter sides of American capitalism. Now, if you stuck till the end, I want you to leave a $ sign in the comments.